Okay, cool. And then I'm going to go ahead and share screen. So as I mentioned, you can ask questions in the chat throughout the presentation. I'm really just going to go ahead and share screen and then just go through the section editor guide itself. So what's in it. So the background behind this section editor guide is previously the community journals, as Bex mentioned, had kind of different workflows and different guidances across the journals. And we wanted to unify everything into a single document that is shared across the journals and making sure that we're providing consistent guidance and critically support to you so that you know what to do in your role. So the way we've approached this is we want to make sure that there's guidance at every key decision point along your manuscript handling process. So starting off here, just to orient on this document, all of these links go to further resources for editors. Most of these resources focus on the detailed manuscript handling for academic editors, but it's good to know those kinds of resources that are provided for them as well, so that you know, okay, what is the AE getting themselves into, and what kind of resources do we have for them? All of that can be found on your journal specific links here. And we'll navigate to that page later on so you can see what that looks like. So very simple table of contents, but I want to start here. So this here is a generalized life of a manuscript at a community journal. So this is consistent now across all of the journals that you're on. And this one's color coded. So I want to draw your attention here to the teal section editor color. So starting from when an author submits a manuscript, the journal goes through at various stages along these life of a manuscript, a technical check, making sure the author's, I don't know, filled out the title in English. We see all types of things, just kind of making sure that everything is in its proper place and ready for you to take a look at it. So then here, the manuscript is assigned to you. So it's now officially on your desk and you have right of first refusal, essentially. So you can either reject or reject and transfer if it's not in scope. And we'll go into all of the details about the guidance behind this later on. I just wanted to provide an overview here. Or you can decide, okay, this manuscript has merit. I'm going to go ahead and send it out to an academic editor for further handling. So then once you secure an academic editor here, then they go through the manuscript handling process noted in gray. And then they're going to recommend a decision. They're going to draft a decision letter, send it back to your desk for you to then take a pass at it. And then that's where we see these three branching here. We can go into a reject and transfer again. Unlikely to go to accept at this point. And then you can typically would send it through a revision cycle here. So it goes back to the authors and then we repeat again. And then eventually the manuscript is either rejected or it's accepted, in which case it goes through the publication process with our production team and in-house journal editor check. Sorry, I'm just going to jump back. Did anyone have any questions? I heard no. Okay, perfect. I'm going to keep going. Okay, so like I said, this guide is very much structured to have resources that are focused in on when you have those key decision points. So the very first point is the manuscript assignment section. So a paper is assigned to you based on the section that you have and then the section that the authors choose. So right away, I want to call out that we have had people say this manuscript is not actually within my area of expertise. And it is possible that that happens because the authors will select a section, and then if you have that matching section based on the availability of other section editors in your area, we distribute them out. You may find that that manuscript is incorrectly categorized into your section. So all you have to do is write to the journal office and say, hey, this one's not really suited for me. Let me zoom in a little bit on this. Okay. So some expectations that we have here, because this is another question that we've got. Typically expected to handle 8 papers per month. These are assigned out. We really do not expect you to handle them as academic editors. I want to make that very clear. By handling, it is issuing that initial decision or working to secure an academic editor who will carry out the majority of the manuscript handling process and peer reviewed process. Another thing I want to call out here is this ability to add unavailable dates. Like many things in Editorial Manager, as I'm sure you've experienced, it's not super obvious where this is. But if you're thinking of your main menu, you log in and you click on your name in the top right, and that'll have a drop down, and there's an Update My Information page. And then if you scroll to the bottom of that, there's an unavailable date section where you can enter dates and a reason. And that's really helpful for us to know, obviously, if you're unavailable. Some timing expectations too, in terms of once that paper is on your desk, taking a look within 4 days if possible, before deciding whether to reject or invite out academic editors. So here we are. So here we're at the next decision point. You have the paper on your desk and now you have to decide, okay, which direction am I going to take this? So in addition to the manuscript quality level decisions here, if the paper just really doesn't have merit to be sent out for peer review. Another thing I want to call out in this particular section is scope of the journal. So in interest of keeping this guide not a million pages long, I've just linked out here to the journal information pages. So you would actually click out here if you're wanting to become more familiar with the scope of the journal and the publication criteria. Each of the journals has a page like this, so you're going to want to go there, read through it, and really become familiar with what would be a suitable paper for the community, in addition to those manuscript level quality. Now, reject and transfer would be, okay, this paper is looking pretty good scientifically, but really isn't a good fit for our journal. So you can actually recommend reject from this journal and transfer it over to another, and the journal offices will handle that process with the authors. It's really a recommendation to the authors. They have to choose whether to submit to the other journal. But you actually do have to pick a journal on the dropdown. So this link here will take you out to a page that shows all of our PLOS journals, and then kind of a one-liner about what is the scope of this journal. So we don't really expect you to be an expert in all of the journals. That's our job, but certainly recommending a journal that you can kind of quickly tell based on this comparison and then the paper is helpful for us to determine next steps. Okay, I'm gonna go through here. Okay, so basically, if none of the above apply, if it's not suitable for rejection or transfer, you're going to move forward with inviting academic editors. And this one is a little bit of a pain point, I will admit. And sometimes, as Joe mentioned, sometimes editors are inactive or they're hard to find. And I will go out and say right away that in an ideal world, we would have like some beautiful recommendation algorithm that would just automatically suggest the perfect editor for your paper. But unfortunately, that is not the reality in which we live in. And so we've written this guide to help you navigate the systems that we do have available for you. So I don't really want to go into too much of the administrative steps in here. You can read through the guide and talk about how to build a search strategy and how to navigate EM to adjust your rankings and everything. But I do want to give you a visual of the process of how you would go about finding a relevant academic editor. So obviously, first part is to read the paper. Okay, what are the keywords? You know, the authors select some themselves, but I would say take that with a grain of salt sometimes because they don't always pick the full complement of potential keywords that might be relevant for that paper. So read it out, kind of pull out your own keywords in mind, and then you're going to go to the journal website for the editorial board. So this is a page that syncs daily with Editorial Manager. So it's a real-time display of who is on the editorial board. And you can search for editors here. So it's a little bit more user-friendly than actually going into Editorial Manager and building a Boolean search, which you'll do next. But first is like, okay, let's say this paper is about neuroscience. So maybe you would just start there, like who is in neuroscience? And it's going to give you here who's in the section neuroscience, and then who has any of these classification terms, which are from the official PLOS taxonomy, who has the term neuroscience in their profile. So you can pick one of these and it'll display all of the editors. If it has a I can't find one quickly. If it has a little triangle on it, that's going to be another section editor. You don't want to invite them to handle the paper, but everybody else will be an academic editor that you could potentially invite. So I would start here, and you can kind of get a sense of, okay, what keywords do these academic editors have? Who might be suitable for this manuscript? And then to really be sure, you could stay on this page and then maybe look them up in a PubMed or a Google Scholar, some other external database to really verify their publication experience. I would recommend that before going into Editorial Manager, just because EM is a little bit clunky. But that would be the next step. You would actually go into Editorial Manager, and you would go and find the paper, and then go into this Assign Editor screen where you can do further filtering. You can look up the people that you found on the editorial board page, or you can actually continue to search in here by some combination. Personal classifications, like I mentioned, are in the PLOS taxonomy, and then personal keywords are going to be free text. Just a word of caution, people put all types of things. Maybe they've spelled out magnetic resonance imaging. Maybe they just typed MRI. So it's a little bit of an adventure in trying to surface some of these people, what they've written, if anything, in their profiles. So I would definitely start with the more user-friendly search page. And then basically you're going to build a queue. You're going to update them in the appropriate order. You can customize the invitation letters if you would like. That could be helpful, or you can just submit the queue, and it'll automatically pace out the number of invitations it sends over time, so we don't send out 8 invitations at once. Let's see, I think I covered most of that here. Start stretch, building a queue. Okay, cool. So then after that time, ideally, someone agrees to handle the manuscript. We'll go in later. We'll talk about troubleshooting if an editor does not agree to handle the manuscript. But let's say you've secured an academic editor. Your responsibility is mostly complete for now, which is lovely. So the academic editor is going to go off and take that paper, secure reviewers, arbitrate their reviews, and then eventually send you a decision. One thing I do want to note here is you may be called upon in this process. We do have the discussion feature in Editorial Manager, which you may be familiar with. So the AE may reach out to you for guidance here and there. So just be prepared. All of that will come into your email. So just, again, keep an eye on your email inbox. That's where we do most of the communications. Even if it's through Editorial Manager, you'll get all of those from your inbox itself. Okay. And then going into this part here, so assessing the academic editor's decision once they've secured their reviews, or if they've decided not to send it out for peer review. Either way, anytime that they make a decision, that's then going to come to you for review and then sending it on to the authors. So I did link here, again, what we ask academic editors to look at. So this is an AE guide, and we talk about what makes a good decision letter. What do you want to include? How to deal with split reviews or reviews that are just kind of poor, that kind of resource material. So basically you're looking for that. Like, did they follow the guidance that we've provided them? Did they write a quality decision letter? Is this helpful for the authors? So we have a guide here, or a table of like what to do in various situations. So if the decision letter is good, for example, you can go ahead and you can pass it right on to the author. And there's the specific clicks in Editorial Manager, how you would do that. Maybe the decision letter needs a little bit of improvement. You can open a discussion with the academic editor. You'll both still have access to that, so you can discuss it in real time. This could be a really good opportunity for the academic editor to learn from you if they maybe are a little less experienced than you are, or maybe it's something nuanced in the paper itself, and you just kind of need to discuss, I'm not sure if we should go forward with this decision, because did you see this part of the paper? Something along those lines. And then we provide some very brief guidance on you yourselves providing feedback. Same thing. You all are mentors at this point, so how can you provide some constructive feedback in a positive way to help them improve the decision letter and make sure that it's in a good condition for the authors to go forward with? Okay. And then what happens after the decision? The authors will revise and then resubmit, and then we'll kind of go through that life of a manuscript cycle again until eventually the paper is either rejected, transferred elsewhere, or goes on to production and publication. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up and we'll get to the questions here, which I think will be the most valuable. But I do want to make sure, like I said, that you know where to find this guide again. So every journal, as I mentioned up at the top, has a resources for editors page. And so they all look like this. So I have computational biology's example up here, but each of your journals has a page that looks like this, and they all look exactly the same. So you will find this on the resources for editors here, which also links out, by the way, the list of board members up at the top here. So that's an important one. You might want to bookmark this page, and this one would be really helpful. Probably the journal information page too. But you would click here, section editor resources. So this will take you right down here where it has the section editor guide linked. So you'll be able to get it from there. We also have some other helpful videos navigating editorial manager here, but the guide for sure. And then last thing I'm going to say in terms of supporting you as well are to go back here to the contacts. So each journal has a journal email. This kind of goes to a single point of contact that we can then route on the back end to the appropriate person. So if you have any questions at all about the manuscript that you're handling, that would be a great place to start, in addition to the journal development managers. If you have questions for them too, I'll let them share their personal contacts with you that you might actually already have. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing at this moment in time and open the floor for questions. I do want to address two questions we received ahead of time. So the first one was, how do I recommend academic editors to join the board? Which is a great question. Thank you. We always welcome your referrals. We have, for each of the journals, we have what we call a web intake form, which is essentially an application form, which helps my team consistently vet academic editors for the editorial board. So those can all be found for the most part on the journal homepage. So if you go to the journal homepage, there should be a banner that says something along the lines of, are you interested in joining the editorial board? So you can actually just send them to that page, and then they can fill out an application, and we'll vet them, and then if suitable, invite them to join the editorial board. And then the second question was a specific question about handling papers with portable peer review. So they were wondering if there's some guidance there. When a paper comes to you, it's submitted to the journal and it's already been reviewed on an external platform. So I'm going to go ahead and pass that to Bex to respond to how to handle papers that already come with reviews by the time that they're submitted.
Thanks, Dina. Sorry, I was frantically typing in response to some of the EM questions. So for the journals in the portfolio, there are some different mechanisms by which you can get these manuscripts that have been peer reviewed elsewhere into our systems. So for PLOS Computational Biology, PLOS Pathogens, and PLOS Genetics, we have a formal agreement with Review Commons. Review Commons is a journal agnostic platform. The editors there peer review submissions, and then once the manuscripts have been peer reviewed, the authors can then choose to either revise and then submit a manuscript to a partner journal of Review Commons, or submit a revision plan to one of the partner journals of Review Commons. So how this would look on a one of the three PLOS journals is the manuscript should come in with a big header on the manuscript itself to say, I am a Review Commons paper. It should be part of the actual manuscript itself. And within the details page of the manuscript is information for section editors, and it outlines where to find the peer review reports. Those peer review reports will include all of the information that the peer reviewers shared with the authors and editors at Review Commons, and it includes the identity of the reviewers. And this is one of the manuscripts in the article, the associated manuscript files. So it's not visible to the authors, but it is visible to you as the editors and to the academic editor that the manuscript is then assigned to. The goal of that relationship is to streamline the peer review process, not to reinitiate peer review from the start. So the aim is to empower you as section editors to use that information within the manuscript and within the peer review reports, and obviously knowing who's written those reports, to empower you to make a decision, whether that is this revision plan would be suitable for my journal. I will request that the authors make the revisions as planned, and I will look at that when it comes back in, potentially consulting with the reviewers again on the revision. Or if we've already received a revised manuscript, at that point, making a decision, working with the academic editor to determine whether we need to go back to those reviewers to see if their points have been addressed. So that's sort of the more formalized mechanism. But all of the journals for which we have section editors and which these guides cover also can accept what we call portable peer review from any journal. Peer community in is another journal agnostic mechanism for peer reviews. But also if an author has gone elsewhere to another journal or to another publisher and had their manuscript peer reviewed, if they bring it to us, our journal operations team will liaise directly with the journal to ask for the reviewer identities and to ask permission to use those peer reviews in the decision-making process, so that all of that intellectual insight and thought and time that has been spent already by the community and giving the feedback into this manuscript can then be used in the most effective way to empower the editors at the PLOS Journal to make their decision. This is not to say that the editors at the PLOS Journal can't seek further advice, either from an academic editor or from the original reviewers or from an additional reviewer if the technical expertise isn't covered, or if that additional insight is needed for whatever reason. But all of the information about the history of that manuscript will be in that details page and directed to you as an editor. These cases are less frequent, obviously, than a manuscript just coming de novo to the journal to start the peer review process from scratch if the article is suitable for the journal. So we're here to answer any questions. If you come across this and you're not used to seeing this, some of the journals receive more of these types of transfers post-review than others. Please just get in touch with us. We're really happy to give feedback either via discussion or an email directly into the journal inbox. The goal is to make the process more straightforward, use it by offering these processes. But because it's a more unusual circumstance, we do understand that sometimes it can need a little bit more support from us in terms of navigating that editorial process. So I hope that answers the question. I don't know if the person who asked it was here, Dina, but.
Yeah, it's very clear. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Right, and now I want to open it up to the floor. If anyone has any questions, you should have the little raise hand function at the bottom, or you can type it in the chat. Also, it looks like the chat has some questions in it already that have mostly been addressed.
Maybe some questions on editorial manager and relevance rankings of suggestions.
Yeah, I just started writing my answer to that, so I will give my assessment there. So the relevance rankings are taken from the particular set of keywords that the author has selected at submission and the 5 or more keywords that different academic editors have provided in their profile, which may or may not be the most up to date. I know we ask our academic editors to update these periodically. So this is it's not a very granular matching process, and it also rather depends on the level that the academic editors have put in their profile. Some academic editors put very high level keywords like biology, for example, It means that those academic editors more often match to more papers because within that ontology or taxonomy line, they are more frequently getting pulled into match than is probably appropriate based on their actual research. So we are looking at different mechanisms for surfacing editor expertise against the actual manuscript and using elements of the manuscript beyond the keyword terms, so including the abstract and other elements to start to improve that matching. It's not something that's going to be coming, unfortunately, in the next few months, but this is something that is a known pain point and is something that we are actively working on. And it is why we are suggesting for the moment in the guide to go and use the terms that are listed in the website and to think of your own keywords that most match to the manuscript itself. It's not ideal and it's not using your expertise to the level that we would like it to be, but it is something that we're working on. Sorry, I'll pass to Dina now.
No, I was just going to add one thing that I forgot to point out because I don't think it's super obvious on the journal editorial board website page itself is that we have now a full list of the available taxonomy terms, so you can make a more nuanced search when you're looking for people. So let me go back to sharing screen again really quickly. Let's go back here. And so this is a relatively new add to the editorial board page. And if you go here and you select classification, as I mentioned, that's the PLOS taxonomy, that'll actually download an Excel file and that'll have the full list of taxonomical terms available for each journal. So that way, you know what kind of combination of terms that you can search for. And again, I apologize. I know that we use classification and keyword kind of interchangeably, but classification, again, being the journal's taxonomy, and then keyword being that free text term that anyone can add in their profile itself. But the guidance on the keywords is meant to fill in any sort of terms that may be missing from our taxonomy. So you can do that like and or search within Editorial Manager there. Yeah, Alexander?
Yes, I'm sorry, I cannot find hands somewhere at the bottom, so I'm kind of physically waving. So I have a few questions to you. So first question is about are you considering involved section editors in the vetting of academic editors, new academic editors on the board? Because I understood that you appoint new academic editors, right? So you look for and you appoint. But do you consider involved section editors in decision to appoint academic editors?
Are you asking about the initial referral of names, or once we have an applicant that has gone through the vetting process, like do we send it to a section editor for approval?
Right, yeah, so this is what I have in mind, approval. So of course you're doing at the beginning everything, so but to decide whether to appoint academic editor, so would be probably appropriate to consult section editors, right?
Yeah, I'm going to pass that question off to the journal development managers, because I believe it varies.
Sasha,
Oops,
you're on pathogens, right?
Yes, I'm on pathogens.
Right.
Yes.
So unfortunately, the Journal Development Manager for pathogens isn't here. So I am going to speak to this, but I think we might need to follow up with you. As my understanding is that generally speaking, we have the two routes into academic editors. So there are the folks that get suggested initially by the editors-in-chief or the section editors, and we ask them to apply. And if they then meet our criteria and are happy to join the board and to sign the code of conduct, then they simply get added into the system and will be available. We also have what we call a web intake form, which is available on most of the websites. Whenever we're actually actively looking for academic editors, it's something that's available, and people can just apply and provide their keywords and CV. Those people are vetted for their publication ethics, for their academic affiliations, and for a number of other things. And if they then pass those sort of high level criteria, they're then passed on to the journal development managers, who then work with the section editors to determine which of those people have the most relevant expertise that is actually needed on the journal. So if that's a connectivity piece that we need to work on, then that's something that we can talk about as a team. Joe and Hannah, have I represented that accurately?
Yes, thank you, Bex. I think the different there's some nuances between the CJs, so some involve SEs in different ways, but yeah, broadly accurate.
But
Yes.
it's possible that you may not have been contacted recently if we are not actively recruiting for your section, because obviously we don't contact all the section editors for all of the academic editors. We tend to focus the feedback on those who are overseeing that particular section.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. Of course, I'm not talking about recent experience, but of course, over the couple of years, I'm involved in the journal. So I've seen that some developments in this respect, and of course, new academic editors were admitted. And when we discussed with the staff how it was done, because there were controversy, at least with some academic editors, about quality. And also, this is what we experience when you invite academic editors and then you kind of look at the results of the evaluation. So sometimes you're surprised, basically, to see a person being academic editor. And of course, again, we discussed that there is a system in the PLOS when you have guest editors, like a step before academic editor, when a person could show up and kind of and also show basically how good in editor. So before to be appointed, considered for academic editor, but I understood that it's sometimes it's people appointed without guest editor experience, and it perfect with me. But again, so it must be kind of some justification. But this is what my question is. So to introduce basically some kind of safeguards and section editors, of course, if you consider them quite qualified, so that their opinions probably would be important.
Yeah, I really appreciate your feedback there. This brings up another thing that I'm actually quite excited about that we're going to be bringing to the journals really soon is kind of this general cleanup of the guest editor pool that's available. So I'm sure you've experienced now when you go to search for an academic editor, you get a super long list of academic editors and guest editors and section editors. Everybody's there on the assign editor screen. But I'm sure you found that not everybody is active when you send those invitations. And so that's something that my team is working on, is removing people who are no longer active from that editorial pool and introducing what we're calling the GE to AE bridge. And so this is exactly that promotional pathway that you just talked about, Alexander, where someone who's been on the editorial board or who's been a guest editor for several years has actually issued decisions. They've had some training experience handling papers. We will then revet them for qualifications and actually take a look at their handling experience as well, and then decide if that bridge to become an academic editor is a suitable pathway for them. And so that's something that we're going to be bringing very soon. So I'm really looking forward to that. for your journals.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand completely. And but as like you already reference was, it's about ideal world. And ideal world, I could imagine that it would be a really kind of smooth process going through this kind of hierarchy. So, but we living in the real world, which is far from the ideal. And also, I believe that it may be quite big variation among journals and among sections also. And so it's, and again, people being guest editors or academic editors for variable reasons, also being kind of young and going up, and sometimes they kind of selected to be there only occasionally given kind of service. So it is very difficult to create a system which would fit every size. And so that is, and of course, this is how you kind of approach. So you just kind of trying to create the system, but it depends on the supply. If supply in excess, so it's fine. So then you could, but if there is a shortage of expertise, so it is different problems. And at least in my section, it is one of the biggest challenges. Basically, demand exceed supply, and so that is a very difficult kind of challenge for section editors and also for academic editors. Yeah, so it's a kind of general remark. So when you're kind of approaching the system, so I'm sure that you kind of dealing with this very well. Okay, so it's I have a couple of other questions. So one a technical question. So recently I observed that change of the template for decision letters, and at least for PLOS pathogens, and also for decision by academic editors, which going to section editor. So what I noticed is that there was introduced 2 lines which refer to reviewer 1, reviewer 2, reviewer 3. And in my experience, it's probably over the last 1 or 2 months, and they left blank. So, but they indicated. And so I'm kind of confused what to do with this, because they also kind of passed to the authors without any kind of information there. So, and I did not receive any comments from the staff.
That one I'm less familiar with. Are you saying that there'll be spots in the decision letter for reviews that are then not auto-populated with the content?
Right. Yeah. So what happens? So it starts from the decision by academic editor. So because so there is template for reviewer, right, which is filled, and also there is a template for academic editor, how academic editor interacts with the senior editors. And so there are some kind of lines where academic editors placed comments. So first line actually, it's a reply to whether there is conflict of interest. And this line often left blank, which is of course wrong. And then when there are lines where there are comments to senior editors. And then there are lines comments to authors. And what changed now in lines for the authors added certain kind of like template, reviewer 1, reviewer 2, reviewer 3. And for no reason, basically, because reviewers have a separate form they fill, and so in decision letter they already provided. So it's not clear what do you mean when you created this type of template.
Interesting. Joe, I see your hand up. Did you want to speak to the decision letter comment or a previous comment?
This is about something else, sorry.
Okay.
So-
Anyone? There we go. Bex.
Yeah, so the PLOS biology editors have noticed some changes in the structure, and I think it might be related to an automatic update. So Sasha, if you have any examples that you could share directly with me, this is something we can look at getting updated. So then we actually can see what it is exactly that's been referred to. So I'm not certain because obviously I'm not an acting section editor, but I think there might be an unintentional change has occurred.
Yeah, but I think that happens with every paper now. I've seen it with the last 2 papers I handled.
Yeah,
I was also confused.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, that's really useful to be aware of because my understanding was that it was not impacting on this journal group, and that's obviously not the case. So
Right.
that's really helpful to be aware of, and it's something that we'll take back. It's been on our discussion point for, yeah, I think it's been a couple of weeks. Does that sound like roughly the right timeline?
Yeah.
So this is something we'll be working with Aries to roll back. That's not an intentional change from our side.
Right now, what I do is I just remove those lines because they're really confusing for the authors.
Yeah.
Because
so this is when
it will
I've
appear that
gone
there's
in.
no reviews.
When I've gone in,
Right.
I've seen that it's looked fine on the journals, and it's obviously because you're all taking proactive measures to make it look fine. So thank you, but it's really helpful to know that that's happening and we can get it fixed at the source.
Right. Yeah. So it's again. So this is what we kind of doing, like what you said. We just can't remove, but you don't know what kind of. Okay. So and the last question, basically very general. So when you kind of show this kind of flow of the kind of interaction, section editors with the whole process. At the beginning, you presented figure 1. So what is lacking there? That process of accepting paper may not be kind of or kind of rejecting paper may not be the last, because sometimes what is followed is appeal. So if authors don't agree with the decision, they appeal decision, and of course then everything going back. And so probably it would be useful if you some kind of provide guidance to section editors how to deal with this, because it could be quite painful sometimes.
Yeah, our peer review operations manager has raised this as something we need to improve the workflow and to also improve our engagement with section editors. Some journals are receiving a very high proportion of appeals on decisions. For other journals, it's more manageable. The appeal proportion seems to have gone up dramatically in the last 4 to 6 months. So it is something that we're actively looking at. I actually think there's the guidance to the section editors, but I also think we need to improve our communications to the authors so that they understand the expectations on them, they understand what the likely outcomes are going to be, and that the decision has been made carefully in the first instance, and to provide section editors with a more coherent package to make that decision on. So the volume of these is meaning that we do need to for want of a better word, operationalize the whole process more effectively, so that by the time it's passed to you as section editors to make that decision, you've got all the information available to make an informed decision quickly. And I also think that there are some appeals that should be declined without necessarily consulting with a section editor if there are no additional pieces of information that require scientific insight, and it's just a procedural request. So that's something that we will be working on. And I saw, Pedro, I saw you nodding that there's a lot of appeals. So I feel there's a couple of journals that are feeling the pinch there a little more than others.
Right. Yeah. So this is what I would like to say, that I'm glad that you mentioned that it increased generally. This is what my experience over the last month. It is almost every month I'm dealing with appeal, And what I learned, at least from this, that you have to be very careful when you write reject. So because your reject letter is becoming basically a target in the appeal, and how you phrase and what you provide have to sustain basically appeal. So when you write a reject letter, you have to have in mind that you could be under appeal. But it would be really kind of appreciated help from the PLOS pathogens in the guidance in this respect. It's yeah. So because it's a lot of time takes.
I did just want to sort of pivot topics here a little bit, just looking at the time and to make sure this makes the recording. I think Samuel had a comment around the responsibility of academic editors providing, roundup summation feedback. This is something they should be doing as a standard part of the practice, just to make that clear. And if you feel like an academic editor isn't consistently providing their subject matter opinion on the reviews, you can let us know, let the JDMs know, and we can intervene with them, say basically, hey, just to make sure you understand the role that you've signed up for, make sure that you're providing those summations that we need. You are the subject matter expert. So yeah, just to say that if you ever have issues or concerns around academic editors or they need to be doing anything, you can always send those to the journal manager, and we will intervene with them tastefully and respectfully. The other thing just to flag that we're sort of looking at, and this is sort of blue sky thinking, is we do recognize, so one of the comments is around expertise, so, around guest editors, when to involve guest editors, when to find someone on the editorial board who has expertise that's missing. And we recognize that we kind of need a more systematic way to receive specific needs of feedback, because currently it's pretty piecemeal. I'll reach out and say, hey, Pedro, what subjects are we missing out on? Cool, send me some suggestions. But it's not very holistic. So I think we're looking at a way to, you guys receive the editor feedback for, basically surveys at the end of the year. How's it going? What do you think? All that kind of stuff. And so we're looking at a way, whether through another means, to say what using that same format, what expertise needs are we missing? So we have a sort of a more central log of what we need to be out recruiting for specifically. And also, this is me speaking as Joe a little bit. A thing I would really like as well is from the academic editor side is to reach out to them to say, hey, are you being over-invited? In which case that might imply we need more folks of your expertise. Are you being under-invited? In which case, does that mean either we're not publishing papers on your topic, or is your name, Xena Zootopia, so you never come up in search results because you're all the way at the bottom. So just figuring out ways to sort of get folks more, even out the workload across those type of things, make sure that we understand the expertise holes that we're trying to fill. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that made the recording.
Good timing on that one. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap us up now. Just noting, I will follow up with everybody over email to share once again the guide, the link to the resources for editors pages, and then the key contacts that we mentioned today, just so you have all of that fresh in your inboxes. And of course, feel free to follow up with any of us if you have any questions that come up later on. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us all today. It was really nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Go
Thank you
PLOS
all.
Bio.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.